2018 is over, and that means it's time to look back at everything that made it great. This week, best games. I think this year's list has probably one of the greatest varieties in the recent past. No two games on my list are alike. Some share the same qualities, but they're completely different in other senses. I've only counted games that were released this year that I played what I would consider a significant amount if I haven't beaten them. There are plenty of games that I haven't played, and some sequels that I'm still waiting to finish the first for, so unfortunately Hitman 2, which has a better version of the first game as DLC, so gets an honorable mention just for that. And Wolfenstein 2, which I played the first half hour or so, and it's at least as great as The New Order, so another honorable mention. It would be a great plot twist if he had so much brain damage that he just thinks everyone's a Nazi. Released almost a year ago, Dragon Ball FighterZ is the fastest selling Dragon Ball game, which is impressive considering they've released a total of around 40 of them since the mid-80s. Made by Arc System Works, known for the Guilty Gear and BlazBlue series, it appeals to both anime fans with its looks and attention to detail, and fighting game players with its easy-to-learn, hard-to-master game mechanics. There are plenty of game modes, including a long story mode voiced by the original voice actors. It's just plain fun to play, and there's something about modern games that makes that a rare thing. The only downside is the matchmaking is the best. A lot of the people there are constantly playing, and if you're a casual like me, you can't get a single hit in before getting destroyed. There doesn't seem to be a low-tier server or anything like that. You just have to hope that another scrub is on at the same time as you, which rarely happens. This is more of a general fighting game problem, but I would think that with its massive popularity and the amount of people only there for Dragon Ball content, it wouldn't be so bad. Personally, I think I've actually had a harder time of it than with something like King of Fighters, which is relatively niche and should have the opposite problem. Anyway, end of rant. Moving on. Detroit Become Human is the latest game by David Cage, who is a master of making games that start off great and turn into confusing train wrecks in the third act. Fahrenheit, aka The Indigo Prophecy, Heavy Rain, and Beyond Two Souls all have this problem. He also made Omicron the Nomad Soul, but we don't talk about that one. The genre of choice-based narrative cutscene and wander games a la Telltale Games, may they be resurrected somehow, and Life is Strange has always suffered from the problem of funneling. None of your options really matter because while you may make choices that affect certain scenes or lines of dialogue in the middle of the game, as you get closer to the end, it always leads you to the final cutscene that's always going to be the same, maybe with different characters standing next to you. If you're lucky, you get to choose between multiple endings, and none of the choices you made throughout the entire game really mattered at all in the end. Detroit has the opposite situation. It's the choices that you make early on that matter, and they carry you through railroaded points with new options unlocked. The endings are all radically different, with the 3 androids you play as able to end up as completely different characters in the end. It shows you a flowchart of what choices you could have made, and more importantly, which ones affect the future. And while the early ones are simple, endgame ones are multiple pages which are mostly blank. On my second playthrough, I missed what I think was the coolest scene while another character wasn't killed. The biggest problem is one typical to the genre. It gives you one-word prompts and expects you to figure out what that means while it's sometimes pretty vague. My go-to example of this is from A Wolf Among Us, where the 2 characters are sitting at a bar, both talking about how they wronged each other in the past. One of the prompts is, glass him. I, and many others, thought that meant buy him around and make peace with him, but no, you smash him over the head with your own heavy glass and start a fight. Another problem is a retroactive one. One of the characters' entire storyline is made completely pointless by an M. Night Shyamalan-style plot twist. Any emotion you felt for the characters involved instantly vanish, as literally every scene makes no sense. Still, it's his best game and worth replaying many times over. My replay's second half was basically a different story, so props to them for actually being able to pull that off. It's very impressive. Spider-Man was another game that was just plain fun, though some collection missions had their frustrating points. I've already done an extensive review of it, so click the link in the corner or the description for a long gushing review about it. I can't wait for the sequel, and I can't think of anything I would change about it. Just gimme more. Yakuza Kiwami 2 is a very enhanced remake of Yakuza 2 from 2008. It has a great story, probably the best in the series, and that's saying something. Yakuza 6 also came out last year, and despite looking great, playing great, and being the finale to Kiryu's story, I just didn't like it. By which I meant it was like an 8 out of 10 instead of the series' usual solid series of 10s. Both 6 and Kiwami 2 lack many of this series' standard minigames that it's known for, such as bowling and pachinko. I'm fine without that one, thanks. Though they did finally fix the karaoke to be playable. That's great. Yakuza games are all about the story, and 2 is recreated beautifully, and new content where you play as Majima for about 2 hours is gradually unlocked throughout the main storyline. Vampire is a game set in post-World War I England, which is infested by vampires and all manner of mythological beasts, werewolves, ogres or something, and so on. It's very reminiscent of early stages of Bloodborne, both in setting and combat, though death is ironically more final even though you're a vampire, and it's far easier. Gameplay outside of combat is very innovative, with your doctor persona mixing up cures for the masses, finding out rumors and secrets about the various characters, all of which increase those characters' blood purity, which gives you a greater XP reward if you decide to bite and feed on them. Did I mention you play as a vampire? The more you do this, the more you level up and the easier the game gets, but killing too many people in the same district brings down its stability and increases the amount of enemies hanging around the outskirts as you travel between locations. This delicate balance of difficulty versus morality is great, since most moral decisions in video games don't really change much. Do the right thing, get one reward. Do the wrong thing, get a different reward. You always get XP. But here, the choice of fighting hordes for 50 XP each and killing an innocent, a character you've grown to know well, for 6,000 XP becomes a tough one. It's possible, but very hard to beat the game without biting someone. Upgrade materials are scarce, which is okay because weapons are too. I was using one of the same weapons I found in the first 3 hours of playing, and the others I found were all worse since I had fully upgraded the first one. I think there were a total of less than 10 weapons, and most of them were just variants of the same base type. Pistols, stakes, clubs, and so on. Those are pretty much the only complaints I have of the game, which is a good sign. Vampire was made by Dontnod, who, before Life is Strange, which was great, made Remember Me, which was average at best, and murdered Soul Suspect, which I never played, but seems forgettable. They all have gameplay gimmicks like Remember Me's memory puzzles, and it's good to see that with Vampire, they finally perfected the combination of combat, story, and the gimmick of the various characters' diseases and secrets. Red Dead Redemption 2 is obviously on this list. It had me from the first second. It looks great, plays just like the first one, which is great, and adds elements of survival to its massive world. While the story, character interaction, and general gameplay is great, it boasts about its world size, but there's not enough to fill it. There's definitely more than its predecessor, and I've found some crazy things just by stumbling into them. But the trip between 2 major places is boring and unsatisfying. Now, let me frame this by saying I played 250 hours of Skyrim without fast traveling. That's because on your way between 2 places that are fairly close together, you can find 5 new things. Both Red Dead Redemptions suffer from the empty sandbox problem. Fortunately, it does occasionally generate random problems for you to solve. But a lot of the time, by the time you get there, the hostage is dead, or there's 2 guys pointing guns at each other and you don't know who to help. Maybe that last one's intentional, but it bugs me. As far as problems, a giant open world isn't the deal breaker though. I love the new health system, which merges old school hard life that stays down and doesn't regenerate unless you use items, and the Halo style shield that regenerates if you keep your head down. Using your horse like a shelf is a bit annoying when your long guns disappear, and it's never really explained well. Also, you can't summon your horse from across the entire map like in a lot of other games like this. That's kind of annoying, but I get that they're going for realism, so I I could go on for a bit even though I'm only on chapter 3, but I'll leave it at that. This is one of those games that's definitely going to have a permanent place on my shelf. Kratos desperately needed to get out of Greece, and the gameplay change is also very welcome. Though it's got that problem of not really being an open world, so I kept doing 2 laps of the whole place, finding a bit that I missed the last time around, and new places that were previously inaccessible after story events would happen. I wish there was a map indicator that showed you that you couldn't explore a location. Just a big huge no symbol. That would be great. Also a fast travel system that didn't require 4 loading screens. That'd be nice. Other than that, it was a great game, though there were surprisingly few gods. But I think it was just meant to be the story of Kratos and his son, so that's okay. Kratos has a shield now, and parrying is one of the strongest things you could do. I feel like the game is meant for people who played the first games as teenager and now have kids, or at least some kind of responsibilities. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the 3rd game in the rebooted series, and I'm amazed that it doesn't start out with her losing all her abilities and equipment from the previous game. I guess she learned her lesson from the first time. I'm also glad it's not set in the ice zone again. The jungle is the perfect setting for Tomb Raider, and it's also the place where after 20 years, Lara finally got good swim controls. They were okay in Rise of the Tomb Raider, but they're perfect here, please don't change them. Once again, there's a survival crafting aspect going on, but it's scaled back a bit. Instead of needing 6 shiny rare bear pelts to upgrade a gun, you use less materials to make outfits that have bonuses. I can't think of anything I don't like about this, so good job. 428 Shibuya Scramble is the best visual novel of the year. I'm saying this even though I haven't been following visual novel releases this year. I'm just that confident. Watch my review using the link in the corner or in the description. Octopath Traveler is something I'm admittedly still pretty early in on, but so far everything about it is great. In an era where Final Fantasy XV is closer to Devil May Cry than Final Fantasy, a turn-based RPG that's got some strategy besides attack or use magic while not being overly complicated is welcome any day. This is nostalgia bait at its finest. It uses old-school sprites, but covers the screen in vignetting, blur effects, and the distant sparkle of the ocean that would never be in a Super Nintendo game. The story is told in 8 parts. An Octopath, you could say. You pick which main character you want to start with, and go through their backstory before they decide to go on a journey, and the party begins to form as you meet the other characters, hear their story, and continue on. I don't have anything bad to say about this either, but I'm still early in, though I've heard nothing but good things, so I think it's a safe bet that it stays that way. And it wouldn't be a good year in gaming without a guilty pleasure game or two. And mine's technically 2, though I don't know why you would only buy one of them. Persona 3 and 5 Dancing follows Persona 4's rhythm game, but without much of a story. The party members of each respective game are summoned in their sleep for a dance-off against the other game's members, after the events of Persona 4 Dancing show that the power of dance actually does have power. Then you play songs and unlock more by playing new songs. It's actually a bit harder than 4, even though they solved 4's problem of not having 16th notes for an accurate rhythm. The normal difficulty is lower than what 4's hard was, and 3 and 5's hard is harder than what 4's hard was. It seems like they were aiming for somewhere in between, but fell short and did the opposite and split it into 2 ways. Anyway, that wraps up this year in gaming. A pretty good year, and 2019 is promising depending on who delivers what. Like, share, and comment your favorite games of last year, and subscribe for more. I'll be back next week with a review of the best of 2018's anime offerings.